Sorry. Had a little fun right there. What's up, everyone? Welcome back to Three Simple Men Making Their Way Through the Galaxy. I'm Tom. With me is Ryan and Mike, and we are back in the Clone Wars again. Season 1, Episode 13, I believe.
Yes,
And,
sir.
and the title, I believe, is actually, I forgot the title, but
Jedi
probably
Crash.
know. But anyways, guys, how are we? And what do we think about the episode?
Good. Definitely a different take from what we saw with the past couple of weeks. I'd say the biggest theme is, what's peace? Because we definitely see the Jedi trying to sell themselves as peacekeepers, and we see, I think it's the Lerman who's quote that, well, how can you manage peace if there's death and destruction along your way? So you definitely see the different perspectives on um, how people are viewing the Clone Wars, whether or not who starts or ends it. So there's definitely a lot to take in with this week's episode.
Yeah, we get the opening quote is greed and fear of loss are the roots that lead to the tree of evil. I'm with you though, Mike. I think the quote you pulled out would have been probably a better one to start with because that really does seem more like the theme of the episode.
Yeah, I would probably say too. You would think with the quotes and stuff, and then we see this big tree, and just like, oh yeah, that's quite the references what they're getting at. But yeah, there's definitely a different change with the tone of this episode, and even like going, how people want to help out. Like I think someone said at one point, you want to sacrifice 1,000 people to help one person, or I want to help them, but I'm going to violate my code of being neutral. So there's definitely a lot going on.
So that quote you just pulled up, you stole my quote, but we could talk
Right.
about it now. So it's said by a new character, right? First time meeting Isla, Jedi Knight Isla Sakura.
Ayla, I believe.
Ayla.
Yeah.
And she says, so jumping way ahead, but Anakin is in trouble, and Ahsoka is frantically trying to help him, and Ayla gives her advice and says, don't lose 1,000 lives just to save one. And when she said that, I kind of laughed because in reality, by saving Anakin's life, Ahsoka, technically doomed how many more lives, right? If we knowing what we know, what Anakin becomes, it's kind of like, oh wow, she didn't really know how wise that really was because saving Anakin might not actually be the best move for saving lives. So I found that kind of funny. But
I mean, if we're going to talk about quotes, I mean, let's talk about we're jumping around.
yeah,
Uh, Admiral Yularen was just like saying, "Are all Jedi that reckless?" That's how much Anakin's got respect. Only the good ones are.
yeah, no, that was a good quote too by her. So we find ourselves with our little recap in the beginning. The Republic fleet is on the defense. Anakin, Ahsoka, and Yularen are coming to the aid of the rest of the fleet. Right off the bat, we get introduced to these separatist ships, and immediately they were new, right? I don't think we've seen these ships before, but they looked very familiar to me, and they reminded me of ships that we won't see until, look at you, Mike, already kind of going with your background to where I was. The Battle of Hoth. They reminded me of the Rebel transport ships from Empire Strikes Back. I don't know if anyone else caught that, but I was like, these look a lot like those ships, but these are separatist ships.
Yeah, so it looks like, look, it's a banking clan frigate, but like, yeah, I mean that's pretty much the backbone of the separatist fleet.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, I think we've seen them in a couple of space battles because I think it was like a couple of weeks ago when we had the whole Anakin, R2, and Grievous moment. I think those are the primary ships that were engaging.
Maybe I just didn't know. This was the first time that I saw them and was like, those really remind me of the Rebel transport ships.
But I will say, just the way like that battle was depicted, it seemed like the separatists had the high ground. So they took a page out of Obi-Wan's playbook, and they clearly had the advantage over the Republic with the way you had like two ships destroyed. Ayla's ship is barely hanging on for its life with little to no deflector shields, and you got 3 or 4 raining fire above them. Then
It
they're
was.
sending up rocket droids in from the
You're right.
tops.
They were firing down. They called them super droids, but then to kind of switch the direction, Anakin comes in from above. So then he comes in with the higher ground, and we get a very classic Anakin moment where mid conversation with Ahsoka, he goes bye-bye and just jumps out of the ship, which I feel like we saw in when he was talking to Obi-Wan in Clone Wars, right?
It's one of those things like, who's got the high ground at this point? It's like, but no, it's like what you just mentioned, Mike. It's more of like, because this is taking place in the Outer Rim, so I think this is the Separatist strategy to attack the Outer Rim systems because they think they have a better chance of success than of defeating the Republic because they're going to focus more on the core worlds, like the inner system. So it's pretty much like the further you go, the better chance you have. And I mean, it's something that I've understood historically speaking, because we always mention, this like we talk about wars, like World War I, World War II, and World War II in particular is more of like, what a lot of people don't realize is it's similar of the Japanese Empire because they controlled a lot of the Pacific Ocean, a lot of free space to roam around, and you not knowing is half the battle. It's one of those things. But yeah, we're moving forward. Typical Anakin, always just jumping right into the battle.
Yeah, the one thing I'll point out too, to your point with the strategy of like fighting in the Outer Rim, you can't really tell like which systems are loyal to the Republic, which ones are loyal to the Separatists. I mean, you would think that it also depends on the resources that they have. I mean, with Separatists, they're just constantly producing battle droids. Like they can crank out droids, ships at a faster pace than Republic. So I mean, yeah, they're very limited with what they do. And I agree with your point that they probably want to focus on the core worlds or planets that are loyal to the Republic versus the Separatist tactics where they are trying to spread their forces thin.
So we do get this battle, which ends up with a damaged hyperdrive. Well, sorry, ends up with Anakin getting injured. And then a damaged hyperdrive, which sends our heroes flying through hyperspace, about to meet their demise by crashing into a burning sun, right? Or star, what do they call it?
Burning star.
A star. And then luckily, with a little help of the Force, they divert and crash land on a new planet. Do we have the name of the planet? I didn't catch a name. And if they haven't
right now, but probably get identified in next week's episode. I'm just trying to go through some notes. Okay. Grass covered planet of Meridoon, and thank you, Star Wars Clone Wars Chronicle Rewatch, for highlighting that.
Meridoon, interesting. Yeah. So we get introduced to a new species, a new creature species. I don't know what we want to call it.
Let's just call species.
We haven't seen before, which was like a lion/eagle, which kind of reminded me of
Gryffindor.
Yep, like a little griffin kind of action going on. What'd you guys think of those? I thought they were kind of cool.
I want one.
Yeah. Yeah. We also then get introduced to a bunch of new clones. We have our old reliable Rex, and then at first I thought it was Cody, and then realized it wasn't when his helmet came off and he had the two yellow tattoos.
It was like a mustard yellow color too.
Yeah, and it's none other than clone Bly, Bly, which interesting character.
Which we'll see him later on in down the road.
Yeah, we'll see more of him. And we get named Lucky, Cameron, and Flesh, but they are not lucky, and eventually become nothing but flesh when they get killed by these griffins. And Ahsoka and Ayla end up coming upon what Ahsoka calls Pod Central, something like
Yep.
that. What'd you guys think of these creatures who we don't know the species of yet?
It reminds me of like a lemur or like
I kind of thought they were lazy characters, to be honest.
Mhm.
Because just what you said, Tom, like I was like, these are just look like cartoon lemurs. Like,
yeah.
I don't feel like they went crazy with like a species design, you know?
No, they were pretty much just, I mean, yeah, like you said, it's kind of like we'll just make them like lemurs and stuff like that, but we see forward, like I think honestly they have the most right sense of what they want as a society. Like, we won't say no to help, but we don't want nothing to do with this war, because there's a lot that the leader says, a lot of quotes that you probably picked up, Ryan, about the Clone Wars in a nutshell.
Yeah, I mean, Mike even said one, and I think it is. They're very, he's a very wise leader, and almost more, I'd say, more Jedi than the Jedi currently, right?
Yeah.
It did seem like, yeah, they're like, we're peacekeepers. They're like, peacekeepers. Where's the peace? Like, you're certainly not keeping it right now. You're fighting a war. So kind of interesting. We'll see how their belief system holds up if, you know, the separatists come knocking at their door. But one thing that I noticed when they go out to help Anakin, the way Wagto, the son of the elder, who's a healer, was kind of running, traveling. He was like rolled up like Sonic the
Yeah,
Hedgehog, but
It,
he
it
moved
was
like a
he
droideka.
was doing the droideka spin.
I know.
yeah,
I was like, interesting. I wonder if maybe at some point the separatists or the Trade Federation, when they made the droideka, if they designed them off of this,
Ooh, interesting
species,
theory.
then you think about it, and it's like, you look at C-3PO, for instance, and you would assume like that type of droid is clearly designed after like a person, right? They walk on the two legs, hands, very like humanistic. But then you get other droids that are kind of, again, of course, I'm I guess breaking the third wall, or the lore of these are droids designed by people internally, and obviously they're droids designed by creative minds making Star Wars. But then you think about it, and like just robots in general, like, or even certain forms of technology in real life, like they're designed after things. Like, we've seen robots that look more like four-legged creatures, or right behind Mike again. It's not really a robot, but kind of is.
yeah.
And you look at different, in real life, we look at actual animal and body mechanics and stuff when they design current robots. And it's interesting to think like maybe that's how they designed the droidekas. They were like, oh, look how these, this species or creature, alien race moves. And then they said, oh, let's steal that and make a battle droid version that moves like they do.
Speaking of animal, somebody wants to say hi again.
Oh,
Come
we're
on.
gonna have to start paying him as
I
a
know.
Yeah, as a
Cosmo.
contributor, yeah.
yeah.
What's up, Bubba? Hmm? Good boy.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just go back up to a point you said earlier too, with the way they were interacting with the Jedi, because like you could tell right off the bat that he didn't trust them one bit, and like he's like, yeah, well, I'll send my son the healer to help you guys out, but the Jedi staying with me as collateral in case like they really brought violence upon them. So it's just like, I want to use collateral, and I don't want your clone with the blaster like out of the question. So, um, yeah, it's it's really tough to see the two perspectives, and then just going off your point with like the lemur or with the way they were rolling and stuff. I mean, it's hard, and especially with with someone like the Trade Federation who's like a warmonger. They're gonna innovate anything and everything to make money, um and yeah, so they're gonna come up with creative designs, whether it's a simple B1 battle droid or a droideka that rolls with the shield generator. So it's
What
yeah,
else is interesting that I noticed, and let me know, I assume you guys picked up on it too, at least the first part. They mentioned that they colonized this planet. This isn't their home planet. They colonized here to flee the war. And at first, the term colonizer isn't really a good one, right? It usually involves not being peaceful. But then the next scene, when they come up on Anakin and Ahsoka's ready to kill one of these, you would assume, native creatures, she ends up getting stopped by Wagto, and he goes, "No, I have another." And he, sure, the Griffin probably didn't enjoy what was happening, but it's not dead. He lassoed him by the feet. He just kind of like temporarily like subdued him, which is kind of interesting and showing, like, one would say, in a peaceful way, right? If you can't have a communicate with them and do it that way, at least you're not fully, slaughtering them like the clones and Jedi have been doing since they landed. So I think that was kind of an interesting juxtaposition, and it shows again that, like, they're really more just fleeing conflict than causing it.
yeah, I agree because I think there was like two or three of them. Like Rex shot one in the eye and it killed them, but then Ahsoka was ready to strike it down with the lightsaber. He's like, no, wait. So yeah, they. I mean, to your comment earlier, Ryan, I think they were more the peacekeepers in this instance than the Jedi. So
Yeah, absolutely.
yep. But I guess another point I want to go on, just like I know I stole your quote earlier, but
That's okay. You're allowed
this
to.
whole this whole concept of what it means to let go, like I mean, with the Jedi tradition, I mean, with the Master Padawan relationship, I mean, of course, you want to stick around. And Ahsoka made the argument that's like, well, if I was in this position, Anakin would do anything and everything to help me. So it's very interesting to see different perspectives of what it means to like let go and make the sacrifice. Sacrifice one for 1,000 earlier versus what it means to be a master and apprentice. And like it was nice that Ahsoka got that perspective from Ayla, that she was in a similar position. Her master was like a father, but at a time you had to let go. And that's probably the biggest thing with this master and apprentice relationship, is knowing when that time is to let go, whether it's moving on to become a Jedi Knight or if they pass away or something. Like they just they mean so much to them, and it's just really hard to understand from a Padawan's point of view when is the right time to let go.
Yeah, and I mean, it's interesting. We've seen, right, Padawans let go of or Padawans that have let go, and usually it's not great, right? I mean,
Yeah, I think we saw that a couple weeks ago with that General Grievous horror episode where Kit Fisto's Padawan. Yeah, he may not have completed his training, but you saw very quickly how he fell to the dark side very quickly, like vowing for revenge, not acting like the Jedi way. So it was definitely a different perspective than what we saw. And again, it's just the way that Anakin and Ahsoka, like you saw it in the movie, how Anakin was reluctant to take it on, but over time you see very quickly that it's a really tight bond. And whether Anakin was injured or Ahsoka was injured, the two of them would drop anything and everything to get to the bottom of it and save them, because they really care about each other. And again, the attachment's forbidden for the Jedi Code, but from a master and apprentice relationship, what does that mean?
yeah,
And
It becomes
so
one of those things where it's just like it's being hypocritical or
yeah, being
unorthodox or whatever you
selfish.
want to call it. It's like
Mhm.
Ahsoka said, we're supposed to be compassionate and have these feelings of protecting life, and but then you always have to keep saying you have to let go. Well, you tell me I have to value life, appreciate life, I should protect and care about things, but you're also saying feelings can't cloud your judgment.
Mhm.
It's we're witnessing, the Jedi really just not making sense anymore.
Mhm.
And I guess we see it with the leader talking to Ayla about that, about how the Jedi aren't really peacekeepers, and which gives me a little bit of a hot take in a theory of more of like we may see Jedi, not many, but start to realize they aren't what they were supposed to be as keepers of the peace. Now that they're just soldiers. So pretty much that line from Mace Windu during Episode 2, Attack of the Clones, we're keepers of peace, not soldiers. Well, you're generals and now you're soldiers. So you're slowly falling away from what you're supposed to be. You're going towards the dark that you don't realize.
Yeah, you're going to the dark side or just losing a sense of who you really are. Yeah, it. I think this was like a theme that we've been talking about in wartime. Like you're really seeing that firsthand. Unfortunately for the Jedi, they're really foregoing the keepers of the peace and become soldiers in general. So
I mean,
Or
we're watching the fall of the Jedi Order, right? That's what all this is. We're
yeah.
watching it crumble, and I mean, we'll see how it turns out. Spoiler alert, not well for them, but that's kind of the slow thing is, and maybe if they weren't so preoccupied and so doing what they were, like who's to say, if they continued on their regular path and followed the Jedi Order and didn't go down this route of becoming soldiers and generals and everything, maybe certain characters or members wouldn't turn to the dark side and wouldn't have destroyed them from within. And so it's going to be interesting to see how it turns out, and to keep watching that and keeping that in the back of our minds, kind of like, hey, are the Jedi still the Jedi? And I'm very, very excited for what I believe is coming out next year, the Acolyte, right? That's
yeah,
supposed to
yeah,
take
yeah.
place in a earlier time where we might see a different type of Jedi Order that's maybe more pristine, maybe not. Who knows? Maybe it's always been a corrupt system, but we'll find out. So it's kind of cool that we get to see that eventually.
I mean, sadly, from what we've been watching so far, I mean, you kind of tell that the fall of Jedi Order began like even before the Clone Wars, because like even Dooku exposed them. It's like, yeah, why are we serving at the whim of the politicians when we really should be independent from them? And like, I mean, Dooku sensed it. I mean, it was one of the lost 20 or whatever it was that they identified during Episode 2. So unfortunately, yeah, this is a tragic fall of the Jedi Order that we're seeing slowly as
Yeah.
we're watching this. So
Yeah, we've never, and who knows, how like they kind of establish time frames in Star Wars right now by battles.
yeah.
Right. It's like after the Battle of Yavin, right? Or before.
Yeah, I think that with the timeline, like before Yavin or after Yavin, yeah.
Yeah. So what could be interesting is when this world continues to expand, maybe, 20 years from now, 30 years from now, it might not be useful to use that anymore because it's going to be such a bigger. So maybe this period becomes known as like the fall of the Jedi Order. And then we get like we know of it as like, right, the Old Republic or the High Republic, we from like legends and books, but I'm trying to stay canon, we don't really have that yet.
I mean,
So
we've got it books with the High Republic era, but yeah, I mean, like
yes,
mainly what we've been seeing
but I
is
mean the mainstream stuff, and that's going to be interesting to see how that eventually is brought in, and how we start referring to things when it all changes.
Mhm.
All right, anybody have anything else?
I will note one thing I did catch. So like while Anakin was on the ship and he was like being cared to by the medical droid, that breathing, like when he was in the thing, kind of reminded me of the way he sounds like Vader. So
It
I don't
sounds
know
like
if you
Darth
guys
Vader.
caught that, but that
Oh,
was
good catch.
a little hidden Easter egg there. So
Eagle Eye Mike, what can we say?
Easter eggs, deep dives, yeah, that one definitely caught my eye with this one. But yeah, I think overall, I mean, this definitely was a different episode than what we saw in prior weeks, and we just see that contrast between what it means to be a peacekeeper and then adhering to the Jedi code. So definitely a change of pace from prior weeks, but yeah, great episode.
All right.
So, well, thank you everyone, and it's a wrap. Come back next week for some more Clone Wars content, and may the Force be with you always.